Hey guys, so I just finished Monster Hunter Wilds story playthrough. It took about 14 hours. I just want to give my early game thoughts on it right now. Obviously, this is the kind of game that really the bread and butter if it opens up after the story, but there's still some things that are consistent across, the entirety of the playthrough. Graphics, audio, blah blah blah. So I want to give some early thoughts onto the game and how I felt about the story and the monsters and the fights and all that. And, then I'm going to dive into high rank grind and see how it feels, which I'm really excited for. Overall, the game was great. I had a great time with it, but there were definitely some issues. So let's start with the good stuff real quick. The character creator was solid. It was fine. I made a character. A lot of customization options, facial features, customize your palico, customize your tent in the game, which is great. A lot of things to, for people to kind of grind and 100% an achievement hunt and whatever outside of just monster killing, if that's what you're into, if you want to take a break from it. One aspect that really surpassed my expectation was actually the music in the game. And I'm usually a big stickler for OSTs in the games we play. Now, Monster Hunter's never had bad music, but it was just like pretty good. But just increasingly, especially in the second half of the story, it was just good, man. Like I was like, wow, this music is really good. They just had great like immersive music, regardless of the situation. Not just the battle music for monsters, but just in general, it was just spot on. It honestly like really impressed me. Zones, I loved the zones in the game. They were great, as you'd expect from Monster Hunter. Just densely packed, a lot of details, weather cycles, events, night day cycles, monsters popping in and out now dynamically. They kind of went for this, open world, open zone feeling, seamless transition, where you didn't have to, a lot of QL stuff too, where kind of your camps are in the zone now. You don't fly out on a mission, do what you got to do, get your kill, go back to base camp, loading screen, loading screen, loading screen. It's just a lot of just fluid gameplay, which was really appreciated. Now, they did go for kind of like a seamless zone to zone thing. Ultimately, I mean, yes, you can like run from one zone to the other, but you don't really do that in the end. You just kind of do what you do in one zone and then fast travel to another zone. So you can technically go between zones if you want. It's more so the action within the zones is fantastic. A lot of elevation, a lot of little caves to explore. The map is fantastic. It tells you exactly what loot is where the monsters are that pop in and out. So just the zones were great and aesthetically great. Like just cozy, except for the third zone. I don't like the third zone, but whatever. Yes, Mr. Cat, would you like to meow and interrupt my video now? With that, exploration in the zones was very fluid, very awesome. Your sacred, your mount, basically anytime you set up like a little any quest objective, or if you put a little marker on the map, it will just auto path to wherever you want to go. Optionally, obviously, if you want to manually control it, or if you see some loot on the way, you can stop at any moment. But you could just autopilot it. It's efficient. I saw some reviews before the game came out saying like, oh, it's like bad pathing. It got caught on stuff. Never had that issue a single time, except for one bug we had, but it was related to a monster bugging out, which I'll mention later. Outside of that, it was just seamless. It was nice because it allows you to look around, capture endemic life if you want with your net. Looting is really fun in the game too, because you have this kind of little grapple hook that you can throw out just by L2 aiming at things. So it's so the mount's auto running. You just loot this, loot that, look around, take the environment, and it was actually quite nice. On beta it felt a little like weird, but I really got into it, and it was nice just having that autopilot option around the zones whenever you want. So zone exploration and all that were great as a result of it, and as a result of the zones looking really good. In terms of quality of life stuff, now, it's been a while since I've personally played Monster Hunter. I did play World. I did play Rise a lot when they both came out, but I didn't continue too much after their, the first week or two of binge when they first came out. But there seems to be a lot of quality of life, even for what I remember. I've already mentioned things like, the field camps, fast travel on the map. You don't have to keep going back to like a big base camp and loading screen all over the place. The mount, the looting, Co-op in general is still like a little shaky, but they've presented it in a much better format. You can make squads now, which are kind of like the equivalent of guilds. You can make private lobbies so that you see your buddies, friends, community, whatever, in the lobbies that you play in. And one note, though, is they still have that thing where if you do the campaign co-op together, then anybody who's not the host or the main party leader like doesn't see the cutscene and stuff. So I still recommend just playing solo through the campaign if that's a problem for your friend, and then doing, you know, co-op stuff later if that's what you want. Other QL things, you have like a second gear loadout now, so you can kind of have a second weapon going on. A lot of stuff is just accessible in town. There's still some stuff they can improve on too. I mean, you have to go in your tent to cook, often in the main camp. You have to go in your tent to access your stash. So having all of that seamlessly incorporated into this kind of push into a bigger zone would be nice. So you don't have to have even these just like little kind of black screen loadings or just scene swaps would be good too. But it's certainly a big step from previous titles in terms of just fluidity of gameplay and just getting right to the action, doing what I could do quick, prepping quick, and then getting back out there to explore, to fight, to whatever you want to do. The monsters themselves, great fights for the most part. There's always going to be some frustrating ones, right? I don't want to spoil and say which ones I didn't like as much or whatever, but for the most part, I enjoyed them. There was a really good variety in monsters. And they, I mean, all, like, a lot of them looked different, played different environments, different mechanics. So monster variety aesthetically as well was really good. Some fights were not my favorite, but that just could go because, I don't know, of the way I was playing, and maybe I didn't know the encounter well enough. I played dual blades throughout the story. But for the most part, positive experience. I will say kind of one knock, and again, I think there's, in general, this is kind of an agreed upon thing in the community. Monster amount was definitely lower. I think it's lower than any title previously that I remember, at least of the two more major, more modern, recent titles. But, you know, you could also argue one of those, like, quality over quantity things. Is it worth having more, but then having them be more samey? I don't know. That's up to you. But there was definitely a little, you know, a few more would have been nice. I know we'll get them with the DLCs and stuff, but, yeah, not a huge concern, but it's kind of like, oh, I want a bit more. Especially in, like, one or two of the zones, you were kind of like, oh, that's it? We'll see if there's more later on. Or how many more later on, rather. Crafting is pretty Monster Hunter style, what you'd expect. You go to the blacksmith and do all your stuff there, all your upgrading there, all the trees are there, all of the armor upgrading is there, trees for weapons, that is. You know, decoration, slotting, all that is pretty much familiar, pretty much the same. Mostly like fine menuing and stuff. There's nothing too out of control. It was nice playing on PC from day one. I still played with controller, but, you know, for menuing, it was nice to be able to just put the controller down for a sec, grab the mouse and keyboard, do what I need to do quick with a mouse cursor, and then get back to it after. And on that note as well, another positive, the gear in general was good. Lots of typical Monster Hunter stuff, right? I mean, this is part of the bread and butter, right? A lot of variety with builds and decorations and armor and perks and weapons and weapon trees and blah, blah, blah. And this is only after low rank, right? Only after the story. So it's only going to increase from here. It's only going to increase from there even further with future DLCs, monsters, etc. So, yeah, so a lot of good stuff. Now, obviously, we need to talk about some stuff that wasn't so good. Overall, I had, like I said, a very good experience with it. But the graphics. Baseline, the game still looked like something out of, like, 2012, man. It was not good. I highly recommend getting the HD pack DLC. It's like a 70 gig download, but if you have the VRAM for it, I highly recommend it. It was like night and day difference. Now, did it boost the graphics to like, oh my god, crazy modern, like I've never seen better graphics in my life? No, but it made it beyond palatable. Like it was quite nice looking, very noticeable. So I highly recommend getting that HD pack DLC that you can find on Steam. I'll try to include the link in the bottom. But it's just way better. Get that pronto if you can handle it. They also made definitely a harder push for story compared to previous titles. You don't really play Monster Hunter for the story. I don't really play Monster Hunter for the story. It was fine. You know, I don't know. That's some bad stuff, like some real Disney moments and stuff like that. I liked the fact that your character was voice acted this time, because it was very funny.
How did you end up in that situation back there?
But for the most part, it was kind of forgettable. I liked the end of the story. Again, no spoilers. It felt like a lot of just nothing really happened for a while, and then at the end you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Okay, let's go farm endgame now, kind of thing, you know? So the story was, it was okay. It was whatever. It was a vessel for delivery. It was a decent enough vessel for delivery into the endgame. The bad performance. Not good. Not good at all. For a game that baseline looks the way it does without the HD packs, and even then, it was just, it's bad, man. It's bad. I ran on a 3090, 5900, all cranked graphics to ultra, DLSS on performance mode, 1440p, and I mean, just, you know, in most of the outdoor areas, it was like 60 to 70 FPS, which is fine. I'm good with 60 plus. But there are so many spikes of like 30, 40 FPS, depending if there's like an explosion or fire. If you're in like a main camp, forget it, it's dipping. Just not well optimized at all, which is really disappointing because it was like the same thing with World, the same thing with Rise when they came to PC. You thought they would have learned their lesson. Obviously, they didn't. Now, I didn't really have any issues with crashes. I read a lot of like, it's kind of getting bombed right now on Steam for performance issues, understandably. But also crashes, I had no issues with that. I had some graphic glitches a couple times, which apparently might be an issue with mesh textures. So if you turn those down, it'll fix, where you just get these like black triangles spiking all over the screen. But it was very brief, and either going to camp or just kind of running away from the area and coming back would fix it, is what it is. But yeah, I only had one bug happen, like major bug, where one of the final few encounters in the story, I did an event, I guess a second earlier than I should have been doing the event, but it still worked, and it bugged the monster out. It like fell into a wall and went under the world, but it was still active, so I couldn't hit it, but it could hit me, and it was just, yeah. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, that was the one time that the mount couldn't auto mount or auto run back to the monster because the monster was just inside of the world. But that was the only time that happened, or anything like that happened. So in terms of bugs and stuff, pretty polished as far as that goes in my experience. No crashes, no bugs, everything mostly working as intended, so it was all right. And the final thing I'll mention real quick, the difficulty. Now, before we go, oh, well, Sloot, it's the story mode and it's blah, blah, blah. I get it. It's low rank. But, I mean, it really didn't have any friction, okay? I mean, I barely upgraded any of my gear, any weapons. I crafted a couple times. I didn't upgrade anything. I did the bare minimum as far as basically the NPCs going like, hey, come here, I have a little tutorial for you. Here's like a couple crafting mats. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll build like an armor piece out of these because that's what it's telling me to do. And that was it. We didn't cart a single time. I think we fainted like 3 times, maybe 4, and a few of those were, or like somewhere in that range, not a lot, and most of those were like that bugged encounter I mentioned, because I couldn't hit him, but he could hit me. But it just like wasn't very difficult. A lot of people said in early previews it wasn't very difficult. I know traditionally Monster Hunter titles are not that difficult when they first come out, for anyone who's like played the games or just plays these kind of games or whatever. But apparently, not apparently, but this one now I can say definitely more so than other times is just not that hard. Now, I'm about to jump into high rank real soon, so we'll see. Hopefully that changes. Obviously it'll be a little harder. How much harder? I don't know. I mean, it's obviously satisfying to need to min-max and grind and whatever to kill the tough monsters. If you don't need to do that, it kind of defeats the purpose of the game. But even if it is a little easier, on the easier side. First update's in, what, like 2 months? And I'm sure they'll get the feedback, and, you know, eventually we're going to get Master/G rank, all that kind of stuff, and it'll be a lot tougher. But we'll see as far as high rank stuff goes soon. So I'm going to get back to the grind. Those are just my early-ish thoughts after, you know, story and all that. I'll maybe put out another one once we kind of get into the meat of all of the end game grinding. But so far, very positive impression. Like, having a lot of fun with it. It's hard to put like a score on it. I don't know if I had to choose like 8.5 area, but definitely having a really good time with it. Go download the HD pack. You will thank me later. Unless your PC lights on fire, then no refunds. Okay, happy hunting.